Hello to everybody watching. It's Connor here. Today is another rainy January 22nd. Today I took 3 trades, so let's dive into it. So the first trade I got in was at 1036. I got 3 484 puts at 1.11 per contract. And I got stopped out about 35 minutes later at 0.89 right here per contract. So this was a 20% loss. I did have a 20% stop loss and it hit just right below that. It was like 19.8%. So overall, like a 20% loss on this one. So the reason I did get in was the 9 and 20 EMA had crossed just a few moments later. So it was on the downside. The volume was still coming in from open, and the TTM squeeze on the 3-minute was on its way down, as well as the 15-minute chart over on the right here. As you can see, it was still downtrending as well over there. And another thing was I did set my 20% stop loss, like I said, and got stopped out. So that's not a bad thing. It could have gone up higher, but I just like to get out when it hits that stop loss. So I did get stopped out on this one. I don't really have any gripes about this one. So we'll move on to the next trade. This one was at 11:14 a.m. I got 485 puts at 1.77 per contract. I got 6 of these instead of 3. And then I got out of it at 2.07 just like 12 minutes later, and I sold all of those 6 contracts there. So let's dive into this one again. So again, the 9 and 20 had still not crossed again, so that was a good entry for me. The volume was still coming in. The TTM squeeze, as you can see on the 3-minute chart, was on its way up. However, if you go here on the right where the 15-minute is, it kind of slows things down. So it was still making big jumps every 15 minutes on the downside. So that's why I got in there. And the reason I got out at the bottom was, as you can see on the 3-minute, it was kind of going between red and green and red and green. That's usually where it's very choppy and doesn't really move much. So I went ahead and got out basically at the bottom there, and it never, as you can see the rest of the day, it never really went below that. So that was good, I guess, on my part. So I really don't have any bad things about this trade. So let's move on to the final trade. This was at 2 p.m. Let me zoom in a little bit. 2 p.m. I got 6 483 calls at 1.17 per contract. And then 46 minutes later at 2:46 p.m. I sold for 1.33 per contract. So this was a 13% gain. So the reason I got in was the 9 and 20 had crossed earlier, about a couple hours earlier, and it never had crossed down. So I was like, okay, I'll get in there. That's one indicator I like to use. And then the volume was slow for a couple hours, but it started to pick back up. And then the TTM squeeze on the 15-minute was on its way up from earlier. It reversed from the morning and was on its way back up. As you can see on the 3-minute, the TTM squeeze was red. However, when I got in, it switched to green. It kind of faked me out. So it was kind of choppy for a while until about 10 minutes before my exit. I did have a stop loss on this one. However, I canceled it because if you look on the 15-minute, even though SPY was going down a little bit, overall the TTM squeeze was on its way up. So earlier I got stopped out, as you remember, and this was a similar situation where I would have gotten stopped out, but my ultimate stop loss would have been if it had crossed the VWAP here on this purple line, but it didn't. So I stayed in, and it ended up paying off because, as you can see, the 15-minute up until close on the TTM squeeze was on its way up ever so slightly. So I ended up selling 6 here. It's just because I was tired of holding it, honestly, and I was up a decent amount on that one. So those are my 3 trades today. I had a few good ones and one where I simply just got stopped out just because I was following my rules, and that's all you can ask for on these days. I'd rather get stopped out and lose a little bit rather than letting it run and lose a ton, which has happened in the past. So I'm learning from my past mistakes. So anyway, I hope you guys got some good information on this, and we'll see you next time.